Pathway to Liberation, a speech delivered at Allahabad on 9th April 1968. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of speaking to you on the important aspect of Sri Ramchandra's Raja Yoga, which in my opinion is paramount as a significant contribution made by Sri Ramchandraji Maharaj, namely the spiritual transformation of man. That I call Pranahuti or transmission, a method adopted for igniting the minds and souls of men to finer and greater achievement of the ultimate reality. Today, I wish to dilate on the supreme possibilities open to the seeker after the ultimate by this means. The attainments that he is likely to meet with on the path to total transformation. A prayer is always to the ultimate being to take you to his ultimate status. It assumes that the divine ultimate can descend and does so, not only in the large historical periods in the form of avatars, but also in the little incidents of a human life, and awakening in the heart of the Antaryamin within each one of us. A prayer uttered to the infinite makes it possible for him to enter into you, and this is done by the guru or teacher who does the transmission on behalf of the ultimate or as the ultimate itself. Therefore, prayer is a necessary preliminary to any spiritual puja or worship. It is an opening of the mind and the heart for the entry of God into you, an entry of the driving force of God into you, till finally it becomes a continuous stream or flow sustaining every activity of yours. When you are awake or asleep, when you are liberated or unliberated, when you have transcended the body or entered into the great and brighter heavens. But the most important and significant feature about it is in the technique. That not only should you say the prayer once or only twice, but afterwards wait for the divine to do his task. I remember the great story where it was stated that an excellent devotee of God, who was rather addicted to the practice of chanting the names of God 1,000 times, had begun his chant. God came at the first call, but the devotee would not recognize it and insisted upon repeating and reciting the whole number of 1008. God said he can afford to wait, and so left. I guess it is so he can't afford to wait, and so left. So it is necessary for you to wait for God rather than make God wait for you. Even when you are devoted and loving, this happens in every case when you think the ritual of number is more important than the practice and realization of the presence of God before you call him. Now, if this prayer is properly performed, then with the deep sincerity and openness of heart, a transmission begins to enter into you almost at once. The most important thing, according to our own practice, and even according to the real works on the subject of spiritual upliftment, show that by and large, when the divine force enters into you, Whenever it is divine, the senses come to a halt, and the mind almost loses interest in the objects which the senses bring to it. That is why this calmness settles in the mind and gently settles in the whole body. This means, according to the technical definition given by the Upanishad Mandukya, that we have passed from the state of Jagrat to a state of Swapna.
Take a pause.
Yeah, I'll take a pause.
Anything to add, sir? Any questions?
Okay, we'll continue then.
Yeah, we'll continue. And from that state, in a deeper meditation and waiting for the flow of divine force within you, flowing throughout your system from top to toe, even as the blood that circulates in your organism, you will find that a deeper calm, almost an obliviousness to surroundings occurs. You are not aware even that you are where you are or that you are practicing meditation at all. It so much stimulates your deep sleep that it is called sushupti. The mind also has come to a halt then. What remains? It is stated that what remains is prajna. What remains is just prajna. This deep sleep state is also comparable, as I mentioned yesterday, to the samprajna samadhi of yoga, because it is not sleep at all. It is the sleep in the infinite or divine consciousness, where you have lost your way of being and your mind has ceased to function as an instrument of your needs, physical, motor, or sensory. It has turned inward. The senses that are usually turned outside, they come to a halt. The mind turns inward. Introspection, they say, begins, but there is no inspection. What do we inspect when everything has come to a halt? It is at that point in this system, by this transmission, that you begin to feel the presence of the flame in the heart, or the Jyoti Antar Jyotir, Amayamam, this inward light. The light that is divine, that comes into you. The earlier two stages are, if you might just call them in that way, cleansing processes, which reveal the light that is within. A flame that has to grow vaster and spread throughout your entire organism. Take a pause. Now, this is a condition where when our abhyasis sit for meditation and are lost in that condition, even at a slightest utterance from the preceptor, they come back to the normal state. They are aware they are not asleep. This peculiar experience of the prajna is easily had in a normal way almost within a few weeks of the beginning of this method. And then what do you discover of experience? Well, you have, as you pass through these experiences of the inner light, what you call the senses of traveling to higher planes of consciousness. And this again has been charted out in a novel way by Sri Ramchandraji Maharaj. It is not something that you find in any work so far published. All that you get from the other works is an arousing of the Kundalini and passing it through the so-called Sushumna that is said to be in the spinal cord, the vertebral column, and taking it through the 6 chakras till it goes to the Sahasrara at the crown of the head. This is the Tantric version. The Upanishadic version, on the other hand, tells you that there is the Sushumna rising from the heart, or that particular nadi that takes you to the Brahma Randra and far beyond. And proceed.
Yeah, I'll proceed.
Our master Sri Ramchandraji puts it very clearly then that it is from the heart that we shall have to go to the crown of the head, not from the sacral plexus to the crown of the head. It is a fundamental difference in approach. So what is opened up in this is the pathway to liberation. 1,000 nadis set out from the heart, but there is only one nadi that takes you to the crown of the head, the Brahma Randra. And some of us who have had the experience of the Brahma Randra know that it is not only a way of exit for the individual soul to the infinity, but it is the way of entry of the divine into the very heart of being into the heart. So what is this Brahma Randra that talking about?
Top motion, no? 10th knot.
10th knot.
Center of the head.
Okay. Sahasrara as we know it.
That is called Sahasrara. So afterwards, only the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th knots are there. So earlier spirituality, they said when you reach the Brahmarandra or the Sahasrara, then you get the experience of Sat Chit Ananda. That means you realize the reality of your being, simple being, which has got no qualities, nothing. It is just a sense of presence. And the nature of that presence is consciousness. And the nature of that presence is bliss. That means bliss means not some emotional kind of a happiness or something. It is just simple, extreme kind of tranquility or plainness. So that is called Satchitananda. So then, but Babuji says beyond that also, there are stages of consciousness possible, and he describes the central region. But earlier, before Lalaji came into picture, everybody said that once you reach the Sahasrara, especially tantric systems, which are very well developed, really spiritual systems, they said once you reach there, you realize, and there is no further realization, no further evolution is possible. You have reached the end of evolution because you feel that you are yourself God. You feel the condition of Tattvamasi. You feel that the problem is The reality is like when we see into the mirror, we see our image. So that is called a virtual image. So the consciousness which I have, now I'm speaking some words, I understand that words. That understanding is the reflection of God in me. So that understanding is actually an image of God in me, or we call it as ego actually. But that ego is like a virtual image. Like if God is not there, there'll be no image. Like you don't appear before the mirror, image also will not appear. The ego appears because it is a reflection of God. But the ego thinks that it is totally separate from everything else around. So in yoga, what happens if you do meditation by several methods, whatever you do, then you truly realize that you are just a servant, or you are an inseparable part of that Atma or Brahma. Then you get that realization that Tattvamasi, thou art that. There is no difference between so-called your ego, which you are feeling, and the continuation of it is the same Brahman which is pervading everywhere. So you get that sense of unity. So that experience was getting at Sahasradal Kamal. So in meditation, at that stage, we have this feeling of unity actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, yes.
Yeah. Now, this is a confirmation of the Chand Yoga and the Brihadranayaka Upanishads. This experience then takes us almost to the cosmic consciousness, what you may call the Brahmanda consciousness. You are made almost to feel that you are a citizen of a vaster world. Not only this physical world, but the astral worlds are opened up. And of course, these are all astral experiences because they are non-mental and non-sensory. If you want to say that they are higher mental and higher sensory, I might be able to accept it. But they are certainly not of the physical order. When we go to that level of consciousness, we are aware of a new dimension to our personality. There only a sense of the I-ness persists, and the body and the body consciousness or the identification with the body almost ceases. You are no longer interested in working out things on the plane of the physical, because at the level of the astral, you have got all that you want for inward knowledge to reach up to the highest point. It is necessary at this stage to point out that many people think that by going to such a level, they can bring the force and the power of that consciousness for their own material purpose in this world. They want to use the powers of the higher inner life for our outer manifestation and aggrandizement. And that is exactly where the yogis have warned us that once you take the inward path, it is dangerous to come down. It is almost tantamount to a fall, and the result is yoga bhrashta. But some of us need not be afraid of it, perhaps. But if you look at it from the point of view of our ultimate aspiration to know reality in its truthness, then we have got to make a still higher approach to reality. And that approach to reality is a dimension beyond the cosmos. And to this level, most of the abhyasis in our system are led in the course of a few years. When they reach that level or arrive at that level, you find that they are quite a different type of men with a different purposiveness of being devoted ultimately to the divine work. A love of God comes more freely to them than a love of themselves or a love of the world. Now, at that level, when one becomes really a prapanna, as Master put it, one who has totally given up himself to the work of the divine, there opens up new frontiers of spirituality. Take a pause. I'll proceed.
Yeah, you proceed. Yes.
It has been stated that much of that experience cannot be described at all. Firstly, because they are not natural to us, but they are natural to the divine consciousness. It is something that you have yourself to experience if you want to know the full meaning and significance of that experience. Now, this is the level you are taken to. Up to this level, many people have taken us, perhaps, but beyond that, Sri Ramchandraji speaks about a level of consciousness which perhaps is not consciousness in the normal sense of the term, when it is confronting a prospect or an object. There is no longer a subject object knowledge relationship. It goes far beyond that, where the subject, the object, and the knowledge are all one. But I think it is a meaningless statement for most of us metaphysicians who are yet thinking in terms of our ordinary knowledge. But it has been promised to most that such an experience is a possibility and the culmination of our experience. At this point, I could only remember the Upanishadic verse Saparyagat Shukram Akayam Avnuam Ashnaviram Shuddham Apapivadham Kavihi Manishi Paribhu Swayambhu Yatha Yato Arthan Vyodadat Saswati Bhashya Sambhya. Sorry, don't read that last one. Saswati Vyasambhya. In this language, in which the Upanishadic seer of the Isa has pointed out that the subject can be transposed to be the object, a subtle play of the cases reveals the magnificent unity that it is arrived at. When a person reaches that particular state, he becomes pure. He is the essence of whiteness or clarity or transparency. And what does he achieve? A level of seeing far beyond Krantadarshi Kavihi, Paribhu, Swayambhu, self-creating that being, all widening that being that he is. And what is more, he sees everything in their true eternal nature. And if we want, and if our philosopher does really require the experience of reality as it is in itself, well, this particular consciousness, which is transcendent in the real sense of the term to the cosmos, must be experienced. It has been a statement, a vision. A practicalization of that had not been possible for most. if not almost impossible, for the pathway of that was somehow barred. Therefore, in the simplicity of this perception and vision, Sri Ramchandraji shows that to that point only the transmission of the highest personality can take you. It is a gift of God. It is the grace of God. It is an opening up of the body of God. Vivrunute tanum swam. It is an opening up of the very body of God. We enter into the splendors that are of God.
Okay, we'll read.
Now, such an experience is within reach of every one of us with the help of the supreme transmission of the ultimate master. All this, it may appear, will demand only one thing from you: constancy of remembrance of your goal, constancy of the guide, or the constancy of the remembrance of the guide who is with you, constancy of the sensitivity of the transmission that is being poured into you, a constancy that requires a fidelity of experimentation and knowledge of the ultimate, that requires the status of a dhira adhira, is one who has mastered the technique of dhyana, of the dhi, and who is courageous enough to follow the light that is coming from within, the dhi. One of the most magnificent verses which has been recited by us through the centuries is the Gayatri. But to whom do you address that? To the solar sphere. And to whom are you moving according to our own tradition? To the solar sphere and to the beyond. That is why the goal that has been set before us is the highest that the human mind could ever conceive of. And the means that has been given to us is the highest that the human mind could ever crave for. It may be a tragedy that we have forgotten all that knowledge. It may be said that the Sri Ramchandra's Raja Yoga is as ancient as the hills of this country. But we are getting it in the most purified form, without all those adorations that have come into it by way of myth, by way of fantasy, by way of power politics in spirituality.
Yeah, okay, go ahead then.
Okay, sir. Now I stated that this path of the Sri Ramchandra's Raja Yoga takes up the frontal position, whereas the tantric system, as I mentioned, takes up what is called spinal levels. Many of you who are interested in spirituality might have been attracted to what is called the Shat Chakra, Nirupana, and the other ways of such things. Here again, we know from bitter spiritual experience during the last 2500 years, I think from the time Tantric Buddhism developed vigorously, we know what extraordinary things have occurred in the name of Shat Chakra Nirupana and the experience of the chakras, the rousing of the Kundalini, and the rest of those things. On these points, Sri Ramchandraji points out that if you reach the higher levels by this path, automatically and naturally, all the centers in the back gets illuminated. And then it is not by the rousing of the Kundalini you go up, but by the descent of the supreme force from the crown of your head downwards. It is not Shakti that has to move up to Shiva. It is Shiva that has to come down to those levels. That is why in this system you do get the awakening of the Kundalini and all the centers. But they are processes of nature or of God and not your individual effort or business. His recent researches, of course, they are researches of nearly 14 to 15 years, have demonstrated clearly that the centers which he has pointed out are much more important in the downward movement, by which from the center the force had moved out to the grossest portion, Adi Mooladhara. For what? For creation and the continuance of creation and procreation of the world. The force has come to that individualized point, and as it is known, you cannot lift it up by just pushing it upwards. They do not go that way. The easier way, as it has been found by him and as it was understood by some of the Vedantins, was to rouse it from the heart and connect it to the Brahmarandra. Then from that it will flow out downwards and correct your whole system. You become more and more moral. As it was stated by an eminent yogi, Sri Aurobindo, the downward movement of the mind has created all these disastrous tendencies which you call kama and krodha. In fact, our own people constantly recite kamoha karshit, manural karshit. They are not ours, they are nature's. And I am not responsible for their working. That is why every type of exertion to control these two forces only replaces them and brings them out in the worst shapes. That is why Master has stated that yours is not to touch those centers, but to go upward, and these things naturally come under control. Now, this is a very great discovery. They are helpful in evolution, but they are not helpful in involution. And the pathway of descent down the hill is more easy by jumping down, but the pathway up the hill is different and ought to be different. It must be a type of spiral. Any man who has constructed a road up to a mountain knows that the twists and turns by which he ascends to the height is the easiest way to go up, though the shortest way may be, as in Tughlaq's kingdom or as in logic, to put a straight line between the two and go there, as the funicular railway system tries to do. Now we don't want to try that job because human nature is not intended for such experiments. On the contrary, the pathway of knowledge, merely taken, does not lead you anywhere. Every knowledge needs a practice, a kriya. And the kriya that we have to do is the prayer. The second thing is to meditate, by which we mean to receive the ultimate consciousness by way of transmission into you. And when it begins its work, your goal is reached in the shortest possible time. And not only that, all the benefits that are set to accrue from the tantric sadhana of the Shat Chakra Nirupana are got in an easier, more natural, and less disastrous way. Human nature has now the possibility of becoming divine with the divine's help. Human effort, I do feel, is necessary, but a human effort that resists the divine movement is not likely to meet with success. Let then human effort coincides more and more with the divine way of ascent. That is why it has been possible for Sri Ramchandraji Maharaj in the short span of a dozen years to reveal the central possibility of the method of Sri Ramchandra's Raja Yoga, which is to help every individual to receive the transmission of the highest consciousness and further to lead him with his help. That is, if he wants to have the appearance of individual effort to go along with it, to reach the ultimate. All that the divine wants is a cooperation, not a resistance. And that cooperation is all that you have to offer when you offer a prayer and sit in meditation for an hour in the morning and half an hour in the night when you go to bed. Well, that is the easiest path which anybody can take and anyone can undertake. And the simplicity of the method, the sovereign result that it yields, verily make it a Raja Yoga.
Any questions?
Okay, then there are no questions. We'll meet next Sunday then.